Good morning, class. Welcome back to English 1150 Short Fiction. It's so great to see all of the good work that you've been doing last week on Flannery O'Connor's short story, A Good Man is Hard to Find. Thank you so much for posting setting and character images for our slide deck, having a really in-depth conversation during our collaborative reading document, the shared document, and then also the voice recordings that you did were superb for reading short paragraphs from the short story. I appreciate with animation, with pacing, and also with sort of expression. You've brought these stories to life in the likeness of Flannery O'Connor's own readings. So thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed this reading. I've included some the extra credit opportunity to read a recent article written about Flannery O'Connor, a little polemic in the sense that it's sort of calling her out in some sense of the way that she's writing, especially with regard to race. And so just something to think about, thinking about how people are approaching Flannery O'Connor. That article came out on June 15th, so I thought it would be appropriate to share since we just started reading this short story. So send me your thoughts if you haven't already for some extra credit. But thank you again for returning a few quick notes on Flannery O'Connor. As you'll see to the left, I found this article, which I've uploaded right near our Unit 3 section on related readings. And so this is by an artist named Dan Bronner. There's 6 illustrations in this article that he drew, which consists of some images from the short story. And so I thought I would kind of show a few of those. But a few brief moments, a few quick reflections on our discussion from Unit 3. Thank you so much. I think one of the things that we've seen in the Google Doc, the shared Google Doc, is this idea that the misfit is actually someone that we not sympathize with, but find not totally alien to our experience. And I think the conversation, especially, I think Alexandria was bringing it up. I think Caleb and RJ and Brendan, Abby, you were all kind of commenting and speaking to this idea that the misfit was this character that you had hoped would maybe turn a corner, had hoped would be the good man from the title. So I wanted to just ask you and sort of end our unit thinking about this question of, the parable, the sort of the quotation from the title, A Good Man is Hard to Find. I'm going to read you just a few quotations from the short story that encompass this idea of what exactly does, quote, good man mean. People are certainly not nice like they used to be, said the grandmother. 2 fellers came in here last week, Red Sammy said, driving a Chrysler. It was an old beat-up car. Said they worked in the mill, and I let them fellers charge the gas they bought. Now, why did I do that? Because you're a good man, the grandmother said at once. A good man is hard to find, Red Sammy said. Everything is getting terrible. So that's sort of our first instance of that title. But we get later in the story this idea of good and bad. She was looking at the misfit squatting on the ground in front of her. I just know you're a good man, she said desperately. You're not a bit common. No, ma'am, I ain't a good man, the misfit said after a second as if he had considered his statement carefully. But I ain't the worst in the world either. And then finally, our sort of last instance of this idea of good and bad, then after he kills the grandmother, the misfit remarks, altering the gender of the expression he alludes to, saying, she would have been a good woman if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life. And so this idea of being good or bad is really complex in Flannery O'Connor's short story. She does a nice job of muddying that term, muddying sort of these personages. Although the reader finds it hard, in fact, impossible to find a good man in this evil man, the misfit. Although some of you have done, some good close readings in terms of the misfit's background and kind of finding that, that humanizes him. The grandmother finds it pathetically easy to do so, and an absurd contrast is created between the reader's perspective and that of the main character, the grandmother. So this proverb, a good man is hard to find, comes to have a sort of dual usage. On the one hand, it can be taken at face value. Or a good man is hard to find. The reader can agree with the minor character who earlier in the story utters the proverb as a judgment. Indeed, a good man is hard to find if the people in the story are to be taken as representative of humanity. On the other hand, O'Connor plays with the proverb, contradicting it, showing how easy it can be to find a good man if one refuses to face up to the reality of evil, just as it has been ridiculously easy to find this evil good man in the first place. And so I think one of the things that we can see in this short story is trying to just determine that sort of disease between labeling someone as good or bad is much more complex, as you've all pointed out. So that's fantastic work. Here's another image. I just wanted to kind of go through these really quickly. This artist included some quotations. She would have been a good woman if it had been someone there to shoot her every minute of her life. So there's the grandmother as envisioned by this artist. They left Atlanta at 8:45, so these are sort of out of chronological order, but here you'll see Pitty Sing the cat, who causes the whole car accident. Alexandria brought up the point that it's interesting that the cat does go up and kind of rub the leg of the misfit. So he's not afraid of cats, but he is afraid of children, and the cat is sort of the one that has caused the whole accident. So this figure of the cat looming in the background is an interesting observation. The trees were full of silver white sunlight, and the meanest of them sparkled. And so Shreya pointed out especially this sort of beautiful landscape portraits O'Connor frames in her writing. Here's Sammy, Red Sammy, a good man is hard to find. Everything is getting terrible. Their pit stop. And thank you for posting that picture on our slide deck of the sort of mock stop where they had lunch at Red Sammy's. And here's our final picture. Some other meanness. Here's the misfit. And so I thought I would share those with you because I thought that was sort of a nice illustration of some of those scenes. Thank you all for your contributions to this Unit 3 character and setting. I appreciate sort of the complexity and sort of the detail that you've used to address this particular short story feature, both character and setting, the sort of complications and complexities of each. One of the things that's really interesting is that Flannery O'Connor was not only a short story writer, but she was also someone that was very interested in art. And so I found this article from the Paris Review called Flannery O'Connor and the Habit of Art. And I just wanted to read you two short paragraphs that describe what is the relationship between art, drawing, for example, and actually writing fiction. And the author writes, for the writer of fiction, Flannery O'Connor once said, everything has its testing point in the eye. And the eye is an organ that eventually involves the whole personality, and as much of the world as can be got into it. This way of seeing she describes as part of the habit of art, a concept borrowed from the French Catholic philosopher Jacques Maritain. She used the expression to explain the way of seeing that the artist must cultivate, one that does not separate meaning from experience. The visual arts became one of her favorite touchstones for explaining this process. Many disciplines could help your writing, she said, but especially drawing. Anything that helps you see, anything that makes you look. Why was the emphasis on seeing and vision so important to her in explaining how fiction works? Because she came to writing from a background in the visual arts, where everything the artist communicates is apprehended first by the eye. For O'Connor, the ways in which she visualized things reflected the way that she wrote about them, especially in terms of characterization. So the Paris Review authors explains that these simple, vivid impressions that she would draw are reminiscent actually of the figures in her cartoons and the attention she gave to certain figures of an otherwise spare composition. A particularly loud pattern in a plaid skirt, a row of wildly grinning teeth, or the texture and shape of some out-of-control amoeba-like hairdo. The minimalist faces described in her fiction also sometimes recall the faces in her cartoons in their small, seed-like or ice-pick eyes, or in their exaggerated proportions, such as Mr. Shiflet's head in The Life You Save May Be Your Own, whose face descended in forehead for more than half its length. So here's an example of one of her drawings. And what I would like us to do this week is to think a little bit about how art, drawing, and writing converge, importantly, together. This week, I'd like to draw your attention to Unit 4, Story and Sketch. We're going to shift our attentions from Flannery O'Connor and her drawings, likewise onto James Thurber, and actually thinking about his cartoons, his sketches. James Thurber, who's the author of the short story you're going to read, very short story called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, also adapted into a film, was actually a creator of numerous New Yorker magazine cover cartoons, and and of course short stories. He's actually one of the foremost American humorists, you'll see in this video below, of the 20th century. His wit and pithy prose spanned a breadth of genres again. So his short stories, modern commentary, fiction, children's fantasy, letters, and cartoons. And so what I would like you to do this week is to kind of dabble a little bit in the short stories of James Thurber. And here's an important sort of connector between Flannery O'Connor thinking about her art and James Thurber. He writes, "Some people thought my drawings were done underwater, others that they were done by moonlight, but mothers thought that I was a little child or that my drawings were done by my granddaughter. So they sent in their own children's drawings to the New Yorker, and I was told to write these ladies, and I would write them all in the same letter. Your son can certainly draw as well as I can. The only trouble is he hasn't been through as much." And so you'll learn that James Thurber, he actually slowly loses his eyesight, which is perhaps why some explain his sort of very minimalist cartoons, very sort of austere, just sort of black and white lines and quick shapes. What I'd like you to do this week is actually to view a film. It's about 57 minutes long. And it talks through and connects James Thurber and his life to this cartoon drawing, to his writing. And so in order to view this video, make sure that you have an account at COD to log into this database called Kanopy. And you can get your account here if you don't have one. But I've already linked the film. So once you've created your account, you simply have to log into COD. Library to view that. So after watching this short film, I'd like you to please decide which sketch your own Thurber-like cartoon that draws from the short story. So you'll have to go down and kind of read the short story. It's all three of these sort of overlap. So read the short story again, very, very short this week. In this sort of collaborative reading, I'd like you to comment on humorist or sketch-like qualities of his writing. Include 2 comments to this effect and 2 responses to peers by Friday. You're doing a fantastic job of including quotes and including definitions, so continue to do that. And I'm really excited. I'm kind of reading silently in the background of your conversations that you're having in text here. So read through the short story first, view this film second, and create a sort of Thurber-like cartoon that draws from the short story. You may decide to make the sketch with pen and paper and then take a picture of it and upload it, or just use your computer, whatever is easiest for you. Please make sure to build out another page on your Google site titled Unit 4, James Thurber's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Include a copy of your sketch, complete with a title or phrase beneath the image, and an explanation about why you made the artistic choices you did. I'm not really concerned about how good the sketch is or isn't. I just want to see that you're able to sort of include an explanation of the choices you made in the sketch in relationship to the actual short story you've read. So please quote from the short story. Publish this Google site and paste it into our discussion board for this week by Wednesday, and then comment upon 4 other posts by Friday. So that's the discussion board part of this segment. The Reading Collaboratively I've already explained, and here's the link to the Reading Collaboratively document, Google Doc. And then the last thing I want you to do this week is, while you're watching the James Thurber Life in Hard Times, please add to our shared slide deck just one quotation from the movie that draws a connection between Thurber's writing and sketching and cartooning life. I'd also like you on that same slide to add an accompanying cartoon from Thurber himself that illustrates this point. So you can either find that particular cartoon doing a Google search, or you could simply pause the video when you're watching it and use your snipping tool on your computer or iPad to capture one of those cartoons as you're watching. So I hope you have a fantastic week. Please email me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to sort of correspond that way, or if you'd like to talk or chat over Zoom or Collaborate Ultra, I'd be happy to try that out with you as well. So thank you again for your attention and for your enthusiasm for this class, and I hope you're sort of enjoying everything that you've been reading. It looks like we're nearly halfway through, so hang tight, and I look forward to sort of responding to you and engaging with you as the week progresses.